But I thought this was really interesting. And I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to be honest with the audience. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this topic, about Ted Leonsis. And it's not really about Ted Leonsis. Ted is just the latest person to try to do this, which is Ted, when asked by the Junkies the other day, said he's got another team, even though he owns the basketball team and he owns the hockey team. And he owns the women's basketball team, and he owns the G League basketball team, and he owns, I think he owns the tennis team. Doesn't he own the Castles? Or do they just play a lot on Monumental Sports Network? Anyway, he owns a lot of stuff. But the baseball team, he's still interested.
I think so. I think that it makes a lot of sense for us in that we want to make Washington, D.C. the greatest city. We want to make our network the most important local network, and we need year-round programming. We need to have scale so that we can compete with the New Yorks and the LAs as a community. And so having winter programming, Caps and Wizards, and then summer programming, baseball team and a women's basketball team, owning the venues, I think we can compete from a business standpoint, from a revenue standpoint with those really big markets. And in baseball, you need that. You really need to have a big base of revenues to be able to afford putting great lineups out there.
So there's a lot on the table here to discuss, but I think the most important thing is the consolidation of power, which I'm extraordinarily uncomfortable with. And that is a general feeling based off the history of how these things go. It's not specific to Ted Leonsis. Like, if you're listening, this is not about you, even if you're the person who is trying to do the thing that we're talking about. Because I actually do think that Ted comes at this from a pretty benevolent place, as benevolent as billionaires can come from, right? Like, I do think Ted does have a level of care about the city, and I do think Ted wants to do a good job with Monumental Sports Network and the programming, and like, he wants to see quality programming and good storytelling, as long as it helps benefit his brand and his business on his network, which is his right. The problem is when you own all the teams and you own the network, who gets to criticize you, who gets to hold you accountable, and what competition is there that pushes you to be the best version of yourself from a competitive standpoint, even if it might hurt your bottom line because you have to invest a little bit more than you otherwise would have. Capitalism only works when it's highly regulated to keep competition. And there are countless examples of this. But at the end of the day, I think that the concentration of power that Leonsis is trying to accomplish just shouldn't be allowed. If he wants to go buy a baseball team in another market, like, fine. I actually have no problem, for instance, with what Josh Harris has done. Harris owns the Commanders, he owns the Sixers, he owns the Devils. 3 teams, 3 different markets. So he does not have concentrated power over any jurisdiction. And I do think, and sorry, Ted, this is about you, we should be especially wary of someone who just tried to leverage the District of Columbia and the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, against each other to try to get tax breaks and try to get more money in their pockets by threatening to move their teams. You can't exercise your power like that and then be upset or weary of someone who looks at you like, whoa, I don't think we should give you more power. And so I think that all of this comes together in a, this is a bad idea. That doesn't mean that I think Ted actually would be a bad baseball owner. I think actually a lot of the things that we've criticized Ted for over the years, specifically with the Wizards, some of the patience, the long-termism and things like that, potentially work better even in baseball. And I think Ted would invest in the minor leagues in a way that is significant with what he's done with the Go-Go and his willingness to spend on any, he spends on the District E, gaming team. He's willing to spend some money, and if it's going to help the organization, he's shown that. That's good. It's what you want out of your owner. But I also just can't have my sports owners, or I would not want my sports owners being concerned about programming their networks. Like the media and the entities that the media covers, and this line, by the way, is getting very blurred, and we can go into this a little bit more. Like those should be different entities, and we're already a place where most team broadcasts are team produced, or game broadcasts are team produced anyway, outside of the national ones. And if the same person who's supposed to be a neutral observer and a critical eye is getting their checks signed by the people putting on the game, that's going to affect the analysis, even if there's no dictate given. Even if Ted and Zach and everybody over at Monumental were to never say anything, or even if they were to say, do not worry about it, it's going to creep in on some level. If that's your job, if that's the place that signs your checks, you're going to have to be like, man, if I say this, if I'm critical, because that's my job as a media member, am I going to get in trouble? Because my boss, or really my boss's boss's boss, is the same guy that is their boss's boss's boss. And, Kyle Kuzma is more valuable than me if I'm breaking down Wizards basketball. I think it's a real thing. It's human nature. Again, that's not a specific shot at Ted or the Leonsis family or Monumental Sports. It's just a fact that I think is happening all over the place. And the deeper part of this is the fact that, ESPN is looking at selling a piece of ownership to, the NBA and the NFL. No journalist would ever be like, yeah, that's great. The closest we have to that in kind of the hard news world is an NPR or a PBS. But those are funded by the governments that they cover and protected by law, First Amendment, et cetera. And there's other safeguards in place to allow NPR to be a truly independent journalism outfit, and PBS, the television version, be a truly independent news outlet. But that said, there's been times where certain government officials have been very critical of them and threatened funding and all of those things. So even then, when there's governmental level legal protections in place, those things get squirrely, nevertheless, in the silly little world of sports that we operate. And so I also, though, I said this is complicated and complex and convoluted, here's the other side of it. The reality is our business, the media business, clearly, if you look around, find any kind of story on these major media companies and the financial situations, we haven't really crushed the digital age. We are flailing to try to find a model that works for media and sustainability and all the things as people expect and can get more information and coverage and such for free. As the market becomes more and more saturated, there are more options than ever. And there are also more ways to get stuff illegally, frankly. In 1985, if you wanted to watch something that was on TV, you had to watch it on TV, which meant paying for a television and paying for whatever service it was that would let you do that. Let you watch it, whether it was cable, over the air, whatever. Now it's that's on Netflix. Hey, Uncle Jim, what's your Netflix password again? And that matters. And so what has happened is one of the areas where people are making money hand over fist is professional sports. And professional sports is reliant on media. And so what professional sports owners have done is either start or buy, like Ted did, their own media networks. And so in our business, one way to have some financial footing underneath you is to work for one of those places. Monumental Sports Network is in significantly better financial shape now than it was when it was owned by NBC. Is that good for the journalism? Probably not. Is that good for the long-term viability of the network to stay operational? Yes. And I think that's good. Working is better than not working. Operational is better than not operational. So this is complicated. Survival, but it also means that Leonsis and folks like him, the owners of the Yankees, the Steinbrenner family, have Yes Network, and I believe the Lakers own one of their networks out in LA, and this is not uncommon. They've got tons of leverage. What are you going to do? If I want to work on television in DC doing sports, I got to work for Monumental. I don't have a choice. Which means doing this segment could be putting myself at risk. What a silly world we live in. But like that's kind of the thing. Okay, well then that's up to the Leonsis family to be like, okay, he's said these things that we might not really like. Do we put him on the air or not? Do we want to own a media company, or do we want to run up, only people saying what we like? And that would, by definition, would be a propaganda network. And those are questions that I think, like if you're frankly the Leonsis family, you have to wrestle with. What's better for our bottom line? What's better for our teams? I don't know the answers to those questions. I know as a journalist where I sit. I know as someone who cares about media and cares about honesty and integrity and what's the word I'm looking for? Non-biased coverage. The ability to be honest on the air. Like, I know where I sit on that. But I also want to see our industry succeed. And if there can be genuine cooperative partnerships, like, that's a good thing. Like, we do stuff. I mean, the Junkies are on Monumental every single morning. They certainly don't hold back and say what they want. And credit to Monumental. They're like, yep, we're good with it. So again, this is a very complicated, convoluted issue with lots of things. But at the end of the day, to end where I start, I'm uncomfortable with the concentration of power. Because rarely is a concentration of power ultimately good for the masses. And in this case, the masses is the fans. If Ted controls everything, we are at the mercy of Ted. Or if Monumental, to not put it solely on Ted, if Monumental controls everything, the teams that we love, the media which covers them, then we are at the mercy of what they want to give us from a competition standpoint. Like, if we're mad that the Caps aren't very good, it's like, oh, we're going to go spend our money on the Wizards. Oh, they're owned by the same guy. Okay, well, fine. We'll buy season tickets to the Oh, crap. They're owned by the same guy. That's not good. It's not good. More diversity in ownership. And I don't mean diversity in like racial, ethnic, whatever, any other type of way you can identify people. I mean diversity in terms of 2 to 3 to 4 different humans owning it. That is better, I think, for a city when it comes to their team ownership. And if Ted wants to be fair to them, if Monumental wants to partner with currently the Learners or anybody else that wants to buy the Nats, and it should be noted, by the way, as Ted did note in his answer, the Nats are not currently for sale. The Learners have pulled them off the market. But if they want to sign a licensing agreement because they own a network, do it. Run your media network like a media network. You don't need to own the team to own a net or to have highlights and to have programming. They do it with JP and Mitch and Beltway Football Podcast on Monumental. They've turned it into a TV show. And that's awesome. They should do that. I want good programming on that station because I like to watch sports stuff. So it really comes down to, are they willing to act like the owners of just a sports network, or do they have to own the team for the sports network to cover the thing? And I hope that that is not the case, because your desire to consolidate and your desire to create, in your own words, if you're Leonsis, year-round programming should not dictate who owns the teams and thus pays for the rosters and all of the things that happen in professional sports ownership.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.